How and why were the Afghan National Army and, of course, the Afghan government so unprepared and unable to protect Afghan civilians from a full Taliban takeover in Afghanistan, even after 20 years of American engagement on the ground? Your response?
Well, there had been by and large, a stalemated situation where the Taliban held much of the countryside and the government held the cities. What really broke the back of things was the combination of the agreement signed by the United States with the Taliban, with the exclusion of the Kabul government in February of 2020. But even more importantly, the announcement in April by President Biden that the United States was leaving and ultimately gave a date definite. Once that happened, and it was very clear that the American forces, that the Afghan forces would not be able to have the benefit of American air support, of its tactical advice, of its intelligence. At that point, they lost what confidence they had. There's been a great deal of talk about how they didn't have the will, but we forget that certainly since 2014, they have taken the brunt of the fighting. They have suffered enormous casualties. So I think it's very unfair to classify them as somehow breaking under fire.
Marvin, in your experience and in your opinion, what do you think is going to happen next? We've already heard from the US Secretary of State pushing for a peaceful resolution and a peaceful transfer of power. Is it likely now that the United States and any Western government is going to recognize the Taliban as the legitimate leaders of Afghanistan, or are we going to see bilateral pushback on this new regime on the ground?
Well, there's no likelihood of an agreement if that means what we have intended it to mean all along, and that was that there would be some kind of power sharing. Right now, what there is a fait accompli. The Taliban have captured the country, the capital most recently, and they will decide the fate of Afghanistan. And it's very clear what they want. It's what they've always said they wanted, and that was an emirate. As far as the international powers, and particularly the regional powers, I think we're fooling ourselves in believing that they're going to turn their back completely on the Taliban. What we've already seen, in addition to what Pakistan may do, we've seen the Chinese and the Russians and the Iranians all sending signals that they're prepared to recognize the Taliban in exchange for Taliban understanding that they must keep their revolution, if you will, within their own boundaries. So they're all interested, as I say, in containment. And in order to achieve that kind of containment, what they need here is to develop a relationship, and they've gone pretty far in doing that already.
I'm speaking to you from Abu Dhabi, Marvin, and the concern in the region is that a win for the Taliban in Afghanistan is a win for insurgent groups, for terrorist groups globally. What do you think is going to happen next, and is it likely that Afghanistan could once again become a hotbed of terrorism into the future?
I think it's entirely likely. I don't believe it's anything that will happen in any short period, but over time, as the Taliban fully consolidate power, that they will find that they have much more in common with Al-Qaeda and even Islamic State, and certainly the Pakistani Taliban, such that there's no way in which they're going to curtail their operations. But those groups are small now. The danger is that with the Taliban taking power, these groups will grow. And as I suggest, the Taliban ideologically has a great deal in common with these groups, even if they don't share for the time being the same agenda.